Good evening, everyone. You all start to come in. Hope you all had a lovely day so far. Getting to near the end. So, for those who are just coming in, if you've not been to one of these sessions before, they are quite open to feedback and questions and queries. So at any point, if you do go, oh, but could it do this, or could it do this, or if you wish me to repeat anything or go back over it, please don't hesitate. Pop it in the chat box. Either I'll pick it up or Beth will pick it up and she'll give me a shout. I want this to be a session that is as beneficial for you from a personal level as opposed to purely just a group. Here's some tools and here's some ideas. The other thing I always do a lot with this AI at the moment is I know that sometimes it can be a little bit contentious with regards to how it's perceived in the news and utilized. But the intention of what we've been doing over the last few weeks with this being the third of our AI sessions is that we really want to look about how it can help to support us do our role more effectively. How as practitioners we can use it to allow us to have a lot more time to spend doing the things we love doing, which is working with students, supporting our learners and the stakeholders in our settings. So everything I'm doing is not about going, how can we, cheat, but it's more about kind of going, well, how can we make our lives easier? A lot of it about how we get these new innovative ideas. So we just had a question in about the previous two sessions. I think Beth is going to put them on YouTube for people to watch them. So I think in the first session we looked at kind of an introduction to ChatGPT. The second one we looked at Bard and we looked at ChatGPT and we looked at how we could break it, which there are limitations with these systems. But for those that are here tonight, the intention is really to look at how can we use Google Bard and ChatGPT to help support our writing of lessons, structuring new ideas, schemes of work. I'm going to be using it with the Curriculum for Wales descriptors to help plan and put some lessons together and hopefully speed us up. So thank you for the questions that are popping in. Again, if you've got any things that you want to put in there, please put them in the chat box. So I will start by sharing my screen. Hopefully you can all see my screen. If you give me a thumbs up if you could see my screen, that'd be absolutely wonderful. Fantastic, thank you very much. And we're going to get beginning. So what I'm looking at tonight is firstly Google Bard, and I'm going to be using ChatGPT. Now both of these tools are AI, and they both utilize kind of the same methodology, same idea of computational thinking. But what I found over the last few weeks of playing with it, I've moved more from ChatGPT to more Google Bard. I found that Google's just been a little bit more ahead of the game than ChatGPT, but I'll be mixing between the two to showcase how we can use them. The first thing I want to start by doing is look at how we can build a science lesson, and then look at how we can then move on to, say, a literacy lesson, and then if we have time, look at some of the maths lessons that we can do with it. So what I'm going to start with is by looking at, on the Curriculum for Wales page here, I'm going to look at some of the descriptors for science and technology. And on purpose, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to pick one in which I don't really, when I looked at it, I was like going, how would I teach that? And that's what I want sometimes, that idea of going, Joe, I've read it and I still don't understand what the devil it means. So what I've looked at on the descriptions for learning, I went down, the first one I really saw was this whole progression step 2. Which was, I can use computational thinking techniques through unplugged or offline activities. I can create simple algorithms. And I was straight away going, all right, that sounds lovely. I'm not really entirely that sure on it. Now, one of the great things I like about this, and some of you may have heard of this idea of what's called ELI 5, which is explain like I'm 5. So if I put in here, let's say, firstly, what is an algorithm for those that aren't sure of it? So if I say explain like I'm 5, what an algorithm is, I'm going to spell it wrong as well because there we go. Okay, so the great thing with something like ChatGPT is you can put anything in there straight away, explain like I'm 5 what an algorithm is, and now I've got a rough idea here. This might be something that's quite good, especially if I'm introducing it as a new subject area to my students. And we're going to go, hey guys, we're going to look at algorithms and computational thinking. I've now got an idea here. So they've described an algorithm as a set of instructions like making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It is American, so you may want to swap that to cheese and cucumber or something like that. Or Welsh rarebit. Sorry. So straight away, I've got this nice little explanation. I could go, okay, well, that's quite a nice little icebreaker. I may want to start that and go, okay, maybe I can get the students to think of what else could be their algorithm from this. And for that, it's all about using the first explanation there, explain like I'm 5. I always like that one. You can also say, let's change it up to explain like I'm 16 years old, what an algorithm is. There we go. So now you can see it's done exactly the same thing. It's defined it, but it's used more kind of suitable language and suitable ideas for different age groups. So a 5-year-old gets a sandwich, but for a 16-year-old it gives you more instructions. Okay, so I've got here these progression steps. Now what I want to do is I want to start thinking about getting some ideas that I could teach. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start off by, I'm going to copy just these progression steps. Now, for this, I'm going to do it both on ChatGPT and Bard to really show you the difference between the two. So I'm going to say on here, using the guidance provided, how could I teach the following key elements? Okay, so I've then just pasted that guidance. Now, what this is doing is it's taking all the ideas and it's starting to kind of go through lots of different ways that I could help meet that. It's producing it for me. It's giving me a lot more detail, a lot more clarity. And this is quite nice. I'm liking this. I can go, okay, following instructions, a bit of control fit. Now it's giving me a lot more information. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the exact same thing. I'm going to put it on Google Bard. And this is really to show the difference between the two tools and the levels of complexity. And I can see how Google is becoming a little bit more complex. It's got a larger, there we go, information to put together. So now, based off this descriptor of learning, I've got some ideas here that I can start to think about. Okay, start by teaching about different types of tools. Okay, that's lovely. Now I want to start thinking about how can I do a lesson. So I could do it a few ways. Am I going to fit all of that in a lesson? Maybe not. What I may start to do is go, okay, I'm going to start building it in a few of them. So I'm going to take just those first 3. Actually, let's try and do all of them and see how that comes up. So I'm going to copy all of those now. What I'm going to say, how could I teach this to a group of 11-year-olds in a lesson? Okay. Now I'm still sticking with Google Bard because what it's now starting to do, it's starting to think about different ways that I could build and meet these procedures based off that descriptor of learning that is there. So it's put together a very simple lesson plan for me. My lesson objective, they're going to use computational thinking techniques, and it's giving me some activities. Okay, very nice, very simple. It's got me some games, it's got me some coding programs, it's got me some assessment activities. Again, we can do this on you know, maybe if you want, what I'll do is I'll copy it and I'll try it in ChatGPT to show the difference. Next, I'll go teach the following to a group of 11. I've just pasted in all that information there. So again, now it's starting to give me a lot more detail on this activity of what I could do. Now, one thing I will say with this, especially with something like ChatGPT, is you've got to be hammering it with instructions. Don't worry, it hasn't got feelings, because it's still, if I look at it, it's going, okay, it's still not giving me enough detail. It's still a little bit vague. So what I'm going to do is, now it's giving me this lovely idea, I'm going to start pressing a little bit more. Instructions for opening task. I'm going to base it around food. Okay, let's start thinking about it, because we had that explain like in 5. Okay, lovely. So what it's doing now, it's got me an idea about making a healthy fruit salad. Now it's gone a little bit off here, because what it's done is, the one thing with this is it's taken safely using tools, materials and equipment, and it's gone for this idea of, you know, cutting safely. Now this is the one thing you've got to be careful with ChatGPT. We'll just take it absolutely literally. Whereas if we go to Bard, what could I do that is required and helps students? Algorithms based around food. Okay. Now it's that whole thing of adding further information. So now I've got this idea. You're going to write an algorithm that tells someone how to make a sandwich. It's also given me some extra things. So you can see the difference really between Bard and ChatGPT is, I think with Google, it's starting to really give you a lot more information about this. Okay, so we've got my first activity. We've got my assessment. We've got what an algorithm is. Then we've got this sandwich activity. Okay, how could I take this to use with software such as Scratch? Because now what I want to do is I want to take it. We've got our opening activity. Now we've got our next activity. Now we've got the use of the software activity. So it's given me some little information here. Using Scratch, create a simple game. Brilliant. 5 simple Scratch code that I could give to students. Go. Thank you very much. And again, this is the other thing here. If you are unsure on any elements, it will take it to the next step. You can add more and more bits and pieces to this, and it is quite a nice activity to have here. So we've got our science activity. We've got our first lesson here. It is absolutely lovely from this, all based around students learning algorithms and what they are and computational thinking. Now let's take it and make it a lot simpler. Makes all of the lesson plan information as above into a tabled lesson plan for a free session. So we've got our standards, we've got our explain like on 5, we've got our opening activity, we've got all of these different bits and pieces, and now we have our nice little lesson plan that we've put together, which is quite nice and simple with the activities. Now this may not fit into the standards that you have, and you may have a set lesson plan there, but it gives us a rough idea. We've now got an instant activity that we could put together. Again, where could we go from this? we can add extra elements to this. Provide some extension activities for learners faster paced. Again, build on it. And this is the key thing with something like this tool here, is we can get it to produce ideas. We can get it to add onto different bits and pieces. We may want to make a homework activity based on this. Create a simple worksheet with activity based on the topics covered in this lesson. It's thinking, and what it's doing is it's now going through all, there we go, all of the questions that we have that we've produced. There we go. And this is, again, the other bonus of something such as using Google Bard over ChatGPT is it does give us all these extra bits and pieces, all these different things that we could use to help support. It's giving us this link here, different activities, and helps us make these worksheets that we may want to support based off this. Here's some extra activities, and we can copy these. Now, with any of this, the great thing about it, you can either export it to Sheets. This is a benefit of using Google Bard, is it connects over, whereas on ChatGPT, it does look a little bit basic. If you don't use Google, then you can just copy and paste it in. But the only thing I'd say with it, doesn't look that great. It doesn't fit in. But it's all about this planning and ideas based on this. Now, if you're looking to make it a bit larger with this lesson, it doesn't just have to be 1 hour lesson. You may want to get some ideas for a larger scheme of work. So let's pick up our, one of our main areas here. Let's pick another topic here. Oh, okay. I can show curiosity and question how things work. So let's say, for example, we want to make a scheme of work that hits these progression steps. Let's copy this one in. So let's go for, we'll go for brand new chat. Okay. Based on the following points, how could I teach this over a chapter? Now, again, you may, I'm not saying that you don't have these ideas already. You already go, oh, okay, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. But actually, sometimes one thing that I know from working in education myself is that your brain will just go, whoa, I'm lost for ideas. I'm absolutely lost for ideas. And you just need that little spark, that little energy. This whole idea of how can I show curiosity and question how things work? Well, here's a nice little scheme of work, a nice little plan that I could put together. Projects could include writing a story about what they're curious about. Share students' work. It structures things for us. It helps us, give us ideas, because I hadn't thought of this idea of writing a story about something they're curious about. Performing a skit about something they learned about communication. It's getting these little bits and pieces, these little bits of information that can really help support us. Now, one of the things I did look at last week with this, especially from the science perspective, is sometimes it's those experiments that we could do. So we can get it to start planning us ideas. I would like practical field day here, science experiment. Based on enhancing students' curiosity, making sure they get to use, I don't know, scissors, glue, and craft material. It is for, and again, this is a key thing, build on it, give it as much information. The more information you get it, the more streamlined the answer is you're going to get. It is for a group of 8-year-olds with the aim to help develop knowledge of trial and error in science. I don't know. We're just thinking, I want some ideas here. Okay, paper aeroplanes. Okay, that's quite a good idea. Now, if I'm not really that impressed with that one, paper aeroplanes, yeah, okay, it's got lots of different pieces on there. Have you another idea? Maybe we've done paper aeroplanes. Keep probing, keep pushing for other ideas. Egg drop. Oh, egg drop, seen that 1,000 times. Any other ideas that are also linked? And this is, again, the great thing is that we can start to think about, well, can we link it to something? Maybe someone's doing something in another classroom. Think to Victorians. Okay. Let's see what they have. Let's push it to the limits with this. There we go. Make your own Victorian perfume. Build a Victorian kaleidoscope. Okay. I'm intrigued by the Victorian kaleidoscope. So now I want a lesson plan based on how to build a Victorian. If anyone knows how to build a Victorian kaleidoscope, how does one build a Victorian kaleidoscope? Because I wouldn't have thought of that idea. Fantastic. I like this. And again, now I've got my idea. I've got my different things. I can make my kaleidoscope more elaborate. Wonderful. Different types of mirror. I've got my curiosity. I've got my engagement. I've got my practical activity. But now let's take it and build it into a lesson. Using the above activity, create a lesson plan that also incorporates a discussion, a group activity, and a summative assessment. There we go. So it's got in there my nice lesson plan. It's all built around this idea of building a Victorian kaleidoscope. It's told me what I can do. So it's got the science element in there about mirror reflection. Then they got this, and now the extension here. Okay, research the history of kaleidoscopes. Okay, make a comprehension worksheet with 6 questions about the history of kaleidoscopes. Let's see what it does. And it's that development of a lesson here. So there's my questions. There are some answers. Fantastic. And they can either research that, or I could ask them, I could say, can you create text to help with questions? Well, and what it will do now is it will produce, there we go, a little bit of text. And we may want to change it, we may want to delete it, we may want to move it around. Actually, what I may want to do is go create, so turn the above text into newspaper story. Make it a little bit more interesting for them. So what it's done now is it's taken this rather bland thing and it's created it into a newspaper story, which I can put in as an extension activity with my questions, and there's my worksheet. So very quickly, in the space of about 9 minutes, we've got our practical activity. It meets our key descriptors of learning. We've got group activity, we've got discussions, we've got some share ideas, and it means that we've then got more time to work with our students, build different bits and pieces, and so on. Sticking with the science theme, if anyone's got any sort of questions about, with regards to the science element, if they are from that background, please drop it in the chat box. The other thing to be aware of as well with this is translate the text above Well, it does have, I'm not sure, I'm not trying with Google Bard. I know with ChatGPT it's got a really fantastic translator. So this is the one thing as well with this. With Google Bard, it's not great at translation, but with ChatGPT, it does have a good. So if I do take the following text, I can put it into ChatGPT, translate the following. Oh, and actually, for those that have done this with me before, it does translate it into a huge array of languages and scripts as well. So you don't have to worry about, oh, can I get it for, if I've got students from Bulgaria, Ukraine, Portugal, Spain, it has all of those that we can translate. So someone's asked a great question. Can you include Google Images? Now, I'm not sure, John, that's a really great question here. So, let's ask it. Yeah, there we go. Now, someone's put a really great question on here. And this is, again, this is such an important element here for us to be aware of. So someone's just put in the thing, I'm not convinced that differentiation suggestions are effective. And I think we need to use our teacher knowledge to edit. Yes, 100%. And this is a fundamental thing that I do say to a lot of people who are a bit dubious about using AI. And the one thing I'll always say about it is it's an idea generator. It's not something that we're going to take away and we're going to go, right, rip it out, there's my lesson. It's more about going, okay, that's a good idea, but the key thing is that you as teachers, you as professionals, know your learners, know your class, know your group. But we can use this to kind of get us some ideas and go, I hadn't thought of that. Now I'm going to take that idea, I'm going to build it. You can change it, challenge it, transform it to meet it. And I think exactly as you've put there in the chat box, that teacher role is still so important. And this is kind of my argument against why when people say AI is going to take over education, it's not really, because there's still huge amounts of limitations to just that human connection between you and your student. So great point. Thank you for making that. Any other questions with regards to the science or how you could use it for science? If not, I'll move on to my next thing, which we look at literacy programs for this. Okay, so the next thing I really want to look at is how we can use it to help support in our classrooms, and look at it from a literacy point of view. So very much like I did with the mathematics, with the science one. Yeah, so someone's just put in there, it's handy if you're stuck for a starting point. Yeah, exactly that. That's all I'm saying that this is for, really. So if we look here at from the literacy point of view, again, we can look at through these themes. And the one thing I really like the theme, it's got here, I can do this, I can do this. And let's think about how we can use it as a starting point for an idea. Now, if we pick a random one that's on here, actually, I'm going to start a little bit differently. I'm going to go from backwards with this one. Now, what we can use this for is we can actually also use it to get it for finding information from texts that are out there. So if we put into here, for example, what happens in chapter 6 of ICE. I'm just going to run this one in the background. Yeah, so someone's just putting here a great question about how one of the issues he found was it wouldn't provide me with a text of the UNCRC article. The key thing that they've tried to do with Google Bard and ChatGPT is move it away from being a web search engine, and they did put a huge amount of information on it, but it won't do that. It won't produce that information. But that sort of thing we can find on Google. it does have two different ideas that it works through. So as we can see here straight away, boom, there we go. This is one of the, again, the things with Google Bard. It won't pick this up information up. Now, if I go to ChatGPT, it will find it for me. Okay, to stop that. There we go. I'm going to regenerate that one again. Actually, I'm going to start from scratch this one. So we can put in, say for example, we're looking at a text. So my knowledge of mice and men isn't that fantastic, but it does give me a little bit of information. And again, it will summarize key text for you. If you're given a text or your knowledge of a text that's out there, this gives us a nice little theme that we have here. So I'm going to produce a lesson which I want to look at in chapter 6 of Mice and Men. How can I teach this? How can I build from this? So I've got this key information here. It's quite good for me. Like, of course, all those English teachers out there going, we'll just read the damn book. But let's look at how we can build it quickly if we're looking for something to summarize. So I want to teach this topic. What can I do from here? My next step. So how can I link the above passage to helping students? And then I'm going to pick a descriptor of learning. Let's pick I can respond. Let's pick these sections here. Okay, so I've got my text there. And now it's starting to give me a few ideas here. Now, not fantastic, but it is a start. Because what I want to do is start building that story alongside it. I want it to start going, this is what I actually want to do, by the way. Okay. So create 3 activities the above request. So now it knows what I want to do, how I want to do it, and now it's going to give me some ideas of what I could do with this. So literature discussion circle, film or art analysis, current events debate. And this is quite nice. Now, the one thing that, again, and this is the difficulty between the two. So I like this idea of the current events debate. I always like, if I'm looking at literature with students, I always like to go, well, how can we link it to something that's experienced in real life at the moment? But based on point 3, what news articles are there that also highlight? See, this is the one thing again with ChatGPT. It has real difficulties combining the two. As stated earlier with the UNCRC question. However, with Google Bard, I can start to play around with this. Based on what occurs in chapter 6 of Mice and Men, what news articles also discuss similar ideas. Now, if it comes back and says, I'm a language model, I'm not able to assist you, there you go, fantastic, it's a lie. Okay, so now it's started to give me some ideas. Now, these are all about American dreams. We've got our idea of the activity. I want them to look at a current events debate, and it's given me some ideas, some articles. Now, again, be aware of the limitations. So if we got here, this article here, I can copy and paste this in. I can put this into, say, into Google and see if it's there. And there you go. There's my article there. Now this one is actually incorrect, and this is the one thing that I do find with a lot of these is there are massive limitations with finding them. Like that one there, that article is not 2015, it's 2002. So, but it does kind of give us an idea of going, okay, well, here's an article that I can find and I can link it to. But again, it's given me an idea of going, okay, maybe I can do a current event debate based on this topic. And that's linked to that very first question that I put in there. So based on this so far, we've got our story, we've got our idea, we've got our questions that we're going to have. But say, for example, we want a little bit of assistance with building our question that we've got. So let's say, based on the topic of above, what critical questions give to a group of 12-year-olds to help support understanding? Yeah, so someone's put a great point in there. Yeah, don't ever ask ChatGPT for a website, because a lot of time the websites are massively incorrect. Instead, what I'd say is what companies or what organizations are out there that offer a website. So rephrase your question from that. And again, if it doesn't give you something that's of use, just keep poking it and keep poking it to find that. It learns through the regeneration of responses. So I've got my critical discussion, I've got my news article debate there, and I can build from here. If we take this, like say for example, we take this as the news article they've given us. The one thing I say with this is, yes, it's an American one for an example, but it's quite heavy for a group of learners. Now, what you can do with something like ChatGPT is I can summarize it and make it a little bit more simple for students to understand. So summarize the following text. Yeah, understand 12-year-old. Now, again, I'm only giving you examples. You may not want to look at the depth of American politics with your group of students, but I'm showing how we've taken this quite heavy news article here, which is a lot of text, and now we're asking it to summarize it nice and simple. It's that whole idea of explain like I'm 5, and we can actually ask it to do it in a certain word count. So I've asked it to do it for a 12-year-old. But what I'm going to do now is that's still a bit text heavy. So I'm now going to say summarize the above into 150 words. So again, it's that whole idea of building upon building upon building. We've got our lesson. And again, this is all based off our chapter 6 of Mice and Men, where we get that critical discussion. Turn all of the activities from above a lesson plan for a not a 3-hour session, 2-hour session. And again, it goes back to the great question that was put in the chat box earlier, which is about this idea of going, well, I don't really think it doesn't really fit too much my group, but it's this idea of going, okay, I've got a plan now, and I'll go in and I'll tailor it and I'll customize it and I'll make it a little bit more appropriate for my students. But I've got that framework, I've got that skeleton there that's being created, and I've done it in 12 minutes, and I've built my lesson from this. And this is the quite nice thing about it. I've got my lesson plan there based on that materials I need. And I can take it a step further, so I can then kind of go from this. I can go turn the above into PowerPoint slides. Now, the one thing about this is it won't create the slides for you unless you get GPT-4, but it will give you the headings of what you could do. So if you're looking to instantly kind of make some quick, nice and simple websites, PowerPoint slides, it's all there, and that's quite nice. Again, we can play with this, and I think we've done it before with the other ones. So, you know, if we go based on themes chapter 6. And into a script from again, it's that whole idea of how can we use it to make something quick, and it's all based on your kind of own knowledge. So here we have the friends gangs talking about, I don't know, it's where you develop it and where you take it and where you build from it. So that's up for you. Any questions at all with regards to it from a literacy point of view, please pop it in the chat box and I'll be happy to help you with that. If you've got any sort of queries or questions as to, but can it do this? Again, you know, if you want to take it the next step, if I want to get some ideas of poetry that I could find for them, there we go. I've now got some poetry, because you know, you go, okay, this is a good bit of poetry. Again, this is the one thing with the links. Let's try this one. If I click on the link here, now Bard is a little bit better for this, but as you can see here, it's taken me down a rather unusual rabbit hole with regards to what it is. So I would always just, if you say, for example, I want to use this poem here, just pop it into a chat box and find it, and it's so much easier because it will all be online a lot of the time, so I can just use it that way there. But there I have my poem that I'm going to use. So it's about that development of ideas, and it's giving us these quick things that we could go from. So the next thing I did want to look at, again, sticking with the literacy thing, I think someone's put here the idea of summarizing it. And this is quite an important thing for us, especially if we're looking to simplify things. I found this article earlier, and it's a really good article that looks at the importance of the schools in Manchester that help develop these footballers and some of the rules that help support them. So say, for example, I want to make a quick resource all based on this, because this is quite a good news article, because it talks about how these footballers have to still attend school and bits and pieces, even though they're world famous. So I've just copied that entire news article there. And what I want to do is I'm going to make this into an activity. Turn this article into a summarized 300 word. So I've taken a big chunk of text there, because sometimes printing out page upon page upon page isn't that exciting. But what it's done now is it's taken this big news article very quickly, and it's put it into 300 words for me based off that news article. Nice, simple activity. So I can now go, okay, maybe for other groups I want to make it 400 words, maybe I want to make it 100 words. Maybe I need to adjust the language, maybe I need to change the text, maybe I want to turn it into Welsh or things like that. Quite a simple way of doing it. Again, if you do want to change it into different languages, I would rate for this, ChatGPT is a lot better at the conversion into different languages. So if I say translate, if someone wants to put a language in the box that they think it can't translate it to, that we just want to test it. I'm going to pop one in the chat box. We'll test it and see if it can translate it into Maori. Let's see. Okay. Does it, if you do speak Maori, or if anyone is aware of Maori, if they could tell me if that is correct, that would be much appreciated. But there we go. So I would use ChatGPT for its translation. I'd use Bard for the summarizing of that. But it's great that we can really kind of play around with this a little bit more. Can we try Greek, please? Yes, of course we can. So translate following text. Again, it's that same 300 word. And if that's accurate and good for you, there you go. And the great thing again is once it's done, you can easily, so say for example, I want to turn this, I want to take this and put it into my, I'll just stop that where it is. Fantastic. And then all you do is you go to this little clipboard, go to your Word document, and we're just going to paste it. And there we go. We've got, make some, you know, if we want to take something, create it. And the great thing again is it means that you can do it in lots of different languages if you've got 3 or 4 in your classroom to help differentiate. And it does the same if I want to turn that into a series of questions for people. So it is quite a good tool for that. But that's just a summarizing tool that we've got there. The other key feature of this, and something that you may find of benefit for you, is to key people role. So if I've got a huge amount of, so I've got a huge article there, and I want to make it into a nice simple table with the key people in that, and from that article. And this is quite good, especially for any of you who may be doing your MA, maybe you're looking at policies and practice and you want to summarize a simple policy into a key section. It's quite a good tool for that. I say that to my students. I say, have a go at this if you're trying to help summarize and simplify a very large policy there. But, you know, it has lots of good tools for us to really support and guide. And this is what we can use it for from a literacy point of view. Okay. Any questions at all with regards to the literacy role? If not, I will move on to my next little element. Okay. So one of the other elements on here that we did look at, that I wanted to look at, was from the numeracy point of view. So if I go back to my curriculum for Wales. Now, in those that were in the last session, we did look at the limitations of the maths on ChatGPT and Bard. And it's one of those things that I still think when you get to the more complicated area of mathematics, it still needs a little bit of work, a little bit of assistance. But if we look at the standards that are here for this, let's go to the descriptors of learning. We can use this to help plan ideas, exactly the same as we did with the last one. So if we've got here, let's go down to thinking of ideas here already. Okay. Trying to find something that we instantly don't jump straight to an idea. Okay. I can explore outcomes and chance using appropriate language. Okay, now the last thing I want to do is start going into betting and gambling, because that's the first thing that jumps in my head if I'm looking at teaching this. So I want to teach that element there. Without gambling or betting. And this is again the key thing when we're using this is how we talk to it. We can actually say, "Well, I don't want this, and I don't want this, and I don't want this." So it's given me some ideas here. Games, Chutes and Ladders, Yahtzee. Oh, that's a good one. Again, hadn't thought of that. It's those quick ideas. It's going, okay, I could look at doing this. Blackjack. Again, now this is where it's going. Well, hang on a second. That's still in a way. That's still, you know, gambling. That's appropriate. So let's say I want to keep this idea of how can I use Yahtzee. So how could I use Yahtzee? And I'm developing this idea further. I've taken one thing it's given me and I'm building it. And it's that whole thing of going, but I'm going to ask more and more and more on top. Okay. Okay. Produce some math sums based on Yahtzee. Students understand. And with, again, it's that thing of developing, and I'm asking further questions for it. Now, the one thing I do like it is it does produce these quite nice little questions for us that we can, there we go, we can copy them. Maybe we can turn it into a worksheet. So now, say for example, we've got this one here. What's the probability of rolling a Yahtzee? Okay, so create a crib sheet that details questions. And this is something that may be useful for us, is to have to one side, or maybe we want to take the information that's on it to build into a larger worksheet. So now we've got our full answers there. We've got these questions here, we've got our answers. So let's build from this one here. How can I extend from this activity using the same elements of matters? Because I'm not sure how I'm going to go from Yahtzee to another area. And it's this thing of kind of, it's going to build, it's going to give me some ideas. A Yahtzee tournament, okay, I don't really want a Yahtzee club. This is going a bit too much on the Yahtzee. Okay, right. Moving away from Yahtzee, how can I develop on? Don't want any Yahtzee. If it comes up with Yahtzee, then I'll just get rid of it. Read some math books. Brilliant. Okay, so I think I may need to give it a few more sort of questions in there that are, you know, there for me, but it's given me those initial steps that are quite nice. Now, the other thing for those that are looking at using AI tools to help support with mathematics, one of the things we looked at last week is the development of quick, simple worksheets and activities that can help us here. So let's say we want to create probability exams. Create 5 probability sum. Well, actually, we can make one. Create probability sum using positive integers from 1 to 9. So let's go from there. Let's see what it comes up with. Okay, so it's given us these nice numbers here. Again, we've started to strip down how we can do from this, and this is a key thing for us if we want to build into a worksheet. So we've got an idea of teaching probability. It links to our description of learning here that we want to have. Let's turn this into turn the above into a not a 6-week scheme of work, a 3-week scheme of learning about probability. And again, it's that idea of I just need some ideas. I need something to help get me thinking about where I'm going to help support. And I've got my rough plan put together with a few activities, and I can take these and I can go, okay, how students create their own games that involve probability. And that's that practical hands-on, and I can ask it further questions to help go from here. So it is a really nice tool for that. So we looked at the science, we looked at English, we looked at the mathematics. There's a huge amount more on here, really based on, it's all about how we critically question it and where we go from here. We've looked at previously how to make instructions, but it's all about thinking what the questions that we want to ask it. So what I'd like to do is really now kind of open it up to yourselves for a few minutes, is to go, is there anything that you go, this would really help me with my planning for next year? Is there any way I can do that? It may not even be one of these tools here. You know, I've used this for my own planning. I've used this for just generating little bits of inspiration. And again, exactly as someone put in the chat box, how can I go from here? How can I develop? Yeah, it's really great for generating text for comprehension activities. I like it for, I've used it for generating generate 5 opening storylines for students. Continue round theme, I don't know, Welsh history, you know, the opening storylines. The paid versions, the step up, especially with GPT-4, the step up I found with there is it's got a wider library of web search. The mathematics appears to be a little bit more better, because one of the things we found with in the last week's session was when we went to quadratics and when we went to simultaneous, it just started to blow up. It was too much, and I would always rate Wolfram Alpha for the AI maths as opposed to anything else. So it's useful in that sort of sense, but for what we're using it for at the moment, it's, you know, unless you're the paid versions, a lot of people who use the paid versions are using it for coding and web coding, for basically doing their job. So I like it for that. That's where it would be useful for. Writing frameworks, yeah, really good for helping to structure that. Yes, Helen's put a great one. Creating typical exam questions gives students some idea to, because you can use it to help with brainstorming and thought sharing ideas. So based on point 2 about create a, but I think we call it a thought shower, sports learning, and we can take this and we can develop it. And the key thing here, there we go, we've got some questions that we go for. If you want to generate worksheets, can they interpret resources to inspire? So you can't copy and paste text in or images, but you can definitely create, if you've got something, you can put in the ideas there for it. You can generate a worksheet if you give it text and ideas. It's great to model sample answers for a question, which is really good. And it's good for, you know, the numeracy problem solving questions. I always like the ones that creates word ones for you as well. So it's good. In our primary school, we'll be planning a subject for a whole progression step. Could it help with this? Yeah, again, start to put some ideas into it of going, how can I link the following that hits this? Again, as the statement said earlier, it will come up with an idea and you will go in, well, okay, I'll move this, I'll move this, I'll move this. And I've looked at some things and I've gone, I'd adjust for that. So it is useful in that sense, but it's about saving time on, you know, some of the bits and pieces. It's those inspirations, it's those creative bursts that we're really getting. But it's not going to replace us. So I can quite assure you of that. You're absolutely safe. But it's something that we need to be aware of, that we can use. And it's about really how do we use it as a tool to benefit us. That's more important. So thank you so much for coming along tonight. I hope you have a great rest of your year. Maybe look forward to seeing you in the new year. So thank you so much, everybody, and I'll see you all later on.